Tonight on Obscured Reality, join us as we discuss the alleged whistleblower David Grush with Mike and get his opinions on whether or not David Grush is a whistleblower and if what he says has some validity to it. Sit down, sit back, relax, and join us on our journey through Obscured Reality.
Welcome to another episode of Obscured Reality. Join your hosts, Mark and Mike, as they take you through a journey of the extraordinary, bizarre, and often frightening world of the unknown. Explore topics of the paranormal, UFOs, alien abduction, lost civilizations, mythical monsters, and other unexplained mysteries. Come along with us as we transcend into another dimension of obscured reality.
Welcome back to Obscured Reality. Back again, Mark, and tonight, Mike and no Stevie. What's banging, bro?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
You know. Hey, we need to talk. We need to talk about the recent Congressional hearing about UAPs. Did you catch this?
I did. I caught it. It took me 2 days to watch it, but it was pretty interesting.
It was long. Yeah. So this wasn't the normal UAP hearing. The normal one is the one where they have the group that is supposedly studying and looking into these to figure out what it is, as if the government hasn't been doing this all along for decades, as we all know now. They already know. So this was just basically a questioning. It was to hear the stories of these three people, and it was also for Congress to question them on these things and their knowledge and all this jazz. So, we have a previous episode on this, as everyone out there knows. The three people in question are, I believe, he's Lieutenant Ryan Graves. He was one of the pilots, and we'll go over that story real quick, Mike. We have Commander David Fravor. He was one of the F-18 pilots that saw the Tic Tac. It was not his plane that recorded it, but he was the one that initially saw it. And then we have David Grush. He's the whistleblower that came out recently within the last 2 months saying, hey, I worked with the group Arrow, or whatever group it was. Well, we'll get into that. He worked with one of these groups recently, and he interviewed a lot of people that were not necessarily whistleblowers, but were coming out about the stuff. And so most of what he said is, you could say hearsay, but it's from interviews of him talking to other people. So just quick recap, since Mike's here, for David Grush. He had served for 14 years as an intelligence officer in the Air Force and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Let's see. He served as a representative on 2 Pentagon task forces investigating UAP until earlier this year. So this was recent for him. You probably heard this in there, Mike. This is probably one of the most interesting parts. We'll get into it. Probably not yet, but we'll get into it soon. He said, he told the lawmakers that he was informed of, and this is quotes, a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, end quote, during the course of his work examining classified programs. He said,
are we talking about like getting all the way back down to like Roswell and stuff? Possibly.
Well, he's saying back to the 30s.
Okay.
He said in there back to the 30s. So he said he was denied access to those programs when he requested it, and accused the military of misappropriating funds to shield these operations from congressional oversight. He later said he had interviewed officials who had direct knowledge of aircraft with non-human origins, and that so-called biologics were recovered from some craft. One of these Congress people asked him, when he used the word biologics being retrieved from one of these craft, they asked him, what do you mean by biologics, human or non-human? He specifically stated non-human. So that's basically it. Was just a quick recap on Grush. We know Commander David Fravor. He saw the Tic Tac. We're not going to get into the story. We all know it. We've all heard it. It's old news, but new news. And then Lieutenant Ryan Graves. Ryan Graves, I want to brief you real quick on that story, Mike. I know we've talked about this before, but you're not going to know this was him, whatever, until I tell you. I'm sure. Ryan Graves. And I don't have this here with me, so I don't have some of the details, but the general story I know. He was flying off the east coast of the United States, Virginia, out of Oceana by Virginia Beach. And their training grounds, their base is right there by the ocean, okay? So for training on their aircraft, whether it's fighter aircraft or other aircraft, but military, they go to train over the ocean. So what they do is when they take off, they fly up to a certain altitude, and there's a window, invisible window in the sky, let's say. And it's on their maps, whatever systems they use, they know where it's at. The coordinates are there. This window is what's used for them to fly into and out of, or at least into. I thought from what I found before, they use this window to fly into and out of the training area, which is over the ocean. So they train out over the ocean, keep it safe.
Mm-hmm.
He said that there was a translucent sphere with a cube inside of it just hanging out, floating in this fucking window. In this congressional hearing the other day, he described them as dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere. So you have a clear translucent sphere, a ball, a circle, right? You can see through it. Inside is a cube with each corner touching the edge of the circle. That's what he described. He's saying, to his knowledge, that is still happening till today. And the incidents he's talking about happened years ago. And he said when that was happening, he said they were there for weeks at a time. Nobody knows what the fuck it was. And this is supposedly the thing someone might have gotten a video of off their cell phone camera in one of these fighter jets. That video had come out at some point, and nobody knows what to think of it. But so that's kind of that. So you watched it. I don't know how much you retained. Obviously, you had to watch it in 2 days, and there's a lot there to try to retain. You know, what do you think of what was said here? What happened in this?
You know, it's pretty amazing stuff, everything that they were saying. And a lot of those stories are things I've heard in the past.
Yes.
But to see it in such a formal and, legitimate setting is what really kind of takes it home for me.
You're right.
It's just like if I seen like a one-on-one interview with that guy, doesn't matter what his, credentials were and what he's done in the past. Right. I'm not saying I would or would not believe him, but to see it in that setting, in a Congress setting with every, all the suits there, all the cameras rolling, and all the people who
Alexandria
had a chance to ask
Ocasio-Cortez was there. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she asked questions.
Yeah, and the thing that gets me is that, okay, our government is taking this serious. That's the part that, gets me. It's not even the stories, because those stories I could have heard 100 times. And as fascinating as the stories are, it's the thing for me is just in the setting in which it's being told. That's the part that, gets me.
I'm going to take it up a notch from what you just said and say what gets me is, number one, what you said, but this is on the record, public, and under oath.
Yes.
So I think that last one, under oath, is very important, and public, because these guys, they are putting it out there for all of us to hear and see under oath. So the reason I point that out is if we were to come to find in 10, 15, 20 years that this was all just a big conspiracy and all of these people were lying, or mainly David Grush, that he was lying, well, he's going to be publicly castrated at that point. People are going to be fucking pissed off if that was the case.
Yeah.
I don't believe that to be the case. I'm not saying that, but that's the importance of this being under oath and public. Everyone, anyone, anywhere around the world can hear this, mostly around the world, can hear this now, see this, watch this, and be a part of it, and it's under oath. So to me, that is very, very important on this.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, that may not mean something to the individual. Maybe they don't care,
Right.
but, nobody's ever going to believe them. It's going to be career suicide if, they're caught lying. But
Right.
it's definitely interesting. I want to say that most of those stories, especially obviously the David Fravor story, I've heard in detail. Most of those stories, they didn't really surprise me, the stories. It just surprised me in the setting in which they were telling them.
Right. Yeah. Well, what do you think about Grush and his story? Have you heard, looked up, read, watched anything about him prior to the hearing? Because he did come out as a whistleblower within the last 2 months. It was pretty big, and he's making a lot of claims. Have you heard or seen anything on this prior to the event, the hearing?
No, I know I've heard his name before. I
Right.
probably have, but I'm not as interested in the topic as you are. So a lot of times when I see stuff, I kind of skip over it unless it's something big.
Yeah, it came out
I
in the
didn't
news.
even know.
It was big. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know about the
Okay.
Congress YouTube thing until somebody at work told me. And they, because they said, you might be interested in this. Check this out.
Yeah.
So that's when I originally sent you that message in the morning, and you had already seen it by that time because I
Yeah.
was probably 3 or 4 hours late to it. But
So let me ask you this. You mentioned a person at work mentioned it to you. Let me ask you a quick question about that person. Is this a topic that interests them, or is this a topic that only interests them right now because it's actually happening?
no, they would already be interested in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a point to go with that if it was the opposite
Okay.
scenario, but it's not. So that's which is good.
Yeah.
But
Over the last year or so, he's brought up different things like this in the past to me.
right.
So we've had discussions about it.
Now, if this wasn't something he was interested in the past, the point I was going to jump to, which I still think holds true, maybe not in your scenario now, but that's kind of the point of doing this, is to show the government that, hey, Congress and everyone's taking this seriously and the public wants answers, but you may get people talking now about the issue that previously may not have said anything, regardless of what they think or
yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
Which
No,
is
and
good.
it definitely did happen because I work in
Right.
an area where there's, I see hundreds of people, a day.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people were talking about it. In fact, even one of my supervisors, his wife is an airline pilot for a major airline. And
Really?
yes, she's been on there for like a full 30-year career. And
She ever
so
seen
we were
anything?
talking. No. And that's what that's what I asked. And he goes, well, I brought the question up to her many times, in her 30 years of being, an airline captain. And,
Yeah.
he goes, and she's been flying since she was like 16.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
he said that so far she hasn't seen anything, or at least anything
Okay.
that she's mentioned to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I would assume you would at least tell
But
your
so-
husband.
So you did have other people at work talking about this that don't have an interest prior to
Yes.
this.
Yeah. One of the guys
That's good.
texted me, an older guy. He texted me.
Ah,
It was like in a group message, and he made some kind of like a joke about, oh, well, now that, the government's acknowledging aliens, which I know that's not what they did. But, the thing is that it's on his mind. He brought it up because
Yeah.
he's watching the news, and I saw it on
And
Channel
that's-
7 News.
and that still shows you the stigma right there, because for him, the way that reads to me is that for him to be okay to open up and talk about this with someone, he has to bring
Yeah.
it up in a somewhat joking manner, which is true for a lot of people. And I'm not knocking it. I totally get it. But that makes total sense. And that goes to show the stigma on this whole thing. And,
Mhm.
it's sad to say, but we have to get to this point to prove this shit. And the community is known for a long time that the government has most likely been studying this stuff for God knows how fucking long,
Hmm.
and then with Lou Elizondo coming out, that proved right there that they have been looking into and studying this stuff prior to the Tic Tac gimbal go fast videos coming out for at least 2 to 5 years prior to that. uh ATIP was around and nobody knew about it, but Lou Elizondo did because he was running the fucking thing. So now it's been proven. And in case you don't know the story, Mike, this is a very quick story. Lou Elizondo was talking in an interview once, and he had gone to some type of I don't know what you want to call it, some type of forum where people speak or whatever. I don't know, but it was something big, and he was one of the speakers. After this event was done, some guy came up to him and shook his hand. He's like, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing and bringing this out. I think it needs to come out." And he's like, "Yeah, no problem. Who are you?" And the guy told him his name. I don't recall the name. He told him his name. He goes, "I was the one that ran the program before you ran it." And Elizondo was shocked. He's like, "What?" He's like, he told the guy, he's like, "I thought we were the first ones to do this." And this guy was like, "No, we were doing it quite a while before ATIP, and you guys did it." The problem is they just keep changing the names to obfuscate the shit and hide it
Hmm.
so that nobody knows. Even if a
Like
name
that.
does get out of a program, if you FOIA request this stuff, you're not going to know what the current name is or the terms, the acronyms they're using,
Right. Just like
because
they
they
did the
change it.
whole UFO, UAP,
Right.
just so that, just keep you guessing.
Exactly, in case it does come out. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think the whole thing was interesting. Biologics. So we've heard of crash retrieval programs, the possibility of it in the past. I mean, this guy David Grush seems for real. This isn't something he firsthand witnessed. This is through looking into these possible programs. This is from interviewing high ups that have knowledge of this stuff. Unless he's being lied to, what he's saying is probably comes off as truthful. I believe him. I don't think he'd go under oath unless that was the case, if that wasn't the
Hmm.
case. But we've been hearing of crash retrieval guys ever since the Roswell days. And I believe Grush is actually saying that this has been happening prior to that. This is back in the 30s, starting at
Yeah.
least back in the 30s, at least.
He seemed pretty credible. I mean, everything he was saying, and just looking at him, he just looks like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It did kind of disappoint me that a lot of things, when they asked him, that he would say, "Well, I can't talk about it on the record." He would talk about them, after the,
Well, I mean, that's
after this
normal
thing's
though.
done.
There's certain things he would have been told by these people he's interviewed that can't come out publicly. There's things he cannot talk to, even like Fravor.
Well,
There's
no, I
things they
agree.
can't speak to in public.
I agree. I just want to know. I just didn't
Of
want to,
course.
I want to hear it. So
I do
that's
too.
why I said, I mean, like, I understand it, but I was still disappointed.
Yeah, I was very glad to hear different things also brought up. Like, I know one of these representatives mentioned the Phoenix Lights, to which Grush said he knew nothing about it. He goes,
Yeah.
I know about it. I've heard about it. I know what's out there publicly, but in a professional format, from looking into things, I don't know anything on that level about it. We haven't looked into that, but
Yeah.
they're asking, and the whole point of this thing, and I know you say the government, Mike, you said it's nice to know the government's actually looking into this and blah 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 and all this stuff, but is it really the government? This is Congress, and I know it's basically
Right.
government.
Yeah. They're
but,
trying to get answers from the government is really what they're trying
right,
to do. But
yeah,
it's on that type of a level where it's not just, it's not in tabloids. It's not in social media. It's
right.
not just, a single person on YouTube, telling a story, but this is in a much more formal setting.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I'm glad this one happened because now basically the world can hear it firsthand from these guys. Not that they haven't before, but they hear it in this professional format, like you said, under oath, and that's very important. And one thing I pointed out to Stevie before was, did you notice anything interesting when you watched this? Did you see the two people that were sitting behind David Grush, Ryan Graves, and David Fravor?
Yes, I saw Jeremy Corbell, and
And next to
was it
him,
George Knapp?
yep,
I'm
Yep.
just guessing. I did see
Yep.
Jeremy Corbell, but I thought that's what I assumed because they seem to be like
yeah,
they go in together all the time. So
yeah, and it's interesting that they were there. I'm not shocked, and I had heard them talking prior to this hearing, and it kind of already came across that they'd probably be there. However, it was very interesting that they're sitting there directly behind these guys so that they're on camera as well.
yeah,
That means the Congress people have to be okay with that, I would assume, as well. But what is happening, what appears to me to be happening, and I think this has been hinted to or talked about by some of these people like Chris Mellon, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, some of them. But I know I've heard it as well. I'm almost 100% positive these Congress people, they're being coached. So, in other words, when they go into these UAP hearings with this new group that's supposedly studying all this stuff, trying to figure it out, um, a lot of the questions they're asking, they've been coached on by people like Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, maybe Chris Mellon, some of these other people. And the reason why is because a lot of these people probably don't have a clue about past stories, about the
Mhm.
alleged things that have been happening. And they're like, they want it out. They want the truth. They want to know what the fuck's going on. So these people are coaching them. And I think that was very clear in this hearing because a lot of these questions, man, they're very pointed and they just
Mhm.
don't seem like stuff that some of these older people would have been knowledgeable on. And that
Yeah,
is a very, very good thing because um, we need people like that, Jeremy, George, possibly others, behind the scenes coaching these guys on what to say and what to ask. If he says this, ask him about this. In the actual hearings where they're talking with the group that's supposedly studying this stuff now, Arrow or whoever it is, whatever they changed it to, um, ask them about the Phoenix Lights. Ask them about Roswell. Ask them, and
yeah.
these specific things especially. Ask them. I wouldn't be surprised if Papoose Lake and S4 from Bob Lazar gets asked at some point. We know what
I
the
wish they
answer is
would have
going to
had.
be.
I wish they would have had Bob Lazar on there too. I wish he could have, been sitting at one of those tables, or at least in the. I don't know.
I don't. I think that would discredit this whole thing. I think it would help discredit this whole thing. The
Okay.
reason why is because it's been, it's been proven he straight
Well,
up
yeah,
lied to George Knapp
yeah,
in the beginning. He straight up fucking lied to him and he didn't have to, but he did. And that just kills his credibility. He might be telling the truth, but it totally kills it. It's proven. It's proven he actually worked at fucking Los Alamos where he said he worked.
yeah,
But he didn't work for Los Alamos. He worked for some outside company that was contracted to do work at Los Alamos. And he worked at this company as a computer tech. So when Los Alamos contracted this company to bring employees over to work at Los Alamos, he went over there to work as a fucking computer tech. If he hadn't lied and been honest about it, the story would still be more believable. Because keep in mind, he told George
mhm,
he worked there. So he was probably banking that he was probably banking that Los Alamos was going to tell George Knapp, yes, he works here and not give him any more info because they probably can't give any more info. They could just verify that the person works there and that's that. My guess is Lazar was banking on that. And that's not what happened. They said, no, we don't know who the fuck this guy is because Lazar didn't know what Los Alamos told George was the second time George called Los Alamos. The first time they said, we don't have any record of this guy working here. The second time they confirmed again, we don't know who this guy is, but they told George, if he happens to work for some outside company and is employed here as a contractor, then it's very possible he could have worked here. In that instance, we wouldn't have record of it because it's through a contractor. We didn't keep records on that at that time. They did of the contract companies, right? But not of the actual people they're sending over. So
yeah. That makes
George was
sense.
even told that. And he went back to Bob and asked him, is there any chance you'll work for some other company and your contract to work there? Fuck no. My resume went to Los Alamos. I was interviewed by Los Alamos. I was hired by Los Alamos. I was paid by fucking Los Alamos. He straight up lied. None of that was true. The only thing that was true is that he did work at the Los Alamos facility. Had he not lied, it'd be more credible. So my point is, to get off the tangent, is I think it would do a big disservice if someone like Bob Lazar was there, only because he straight up fucking lied, and it's been proven in the beginning to George. That wouldn't look good for this, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I only made that statement just because I have always just enjoyed his story, and I like the story, but I know it's always been, a lot questioning his character. So
just because of that. But, and he's done a lot of hinting around to possibly have taken some element 115 out of S4 and he has it somewhere. It's like, well, then now is the time to use your contacts like George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell to help you get this over to other scientists, to other people to study it and look at it and verify on paper and in person that this is actually element 115, a stable version of it, and then have Jeremy and George bring this out to the public, because that wouldn't prove his story 100%, but it would get it basically right there. Like you'd probably have a hard time saying his story's not true, at that point. Mm-hmm. But it's like, this is the time. But since, you mentioned Bob Lazar, things like these hearings, if the government's pushed and pushed and pushed and we get to the point where it's shown to be true that this is happening, we know something's happening. This is now a fact. Something weird is fucking happening in the skies, in the oceans, and in bodies of water. We know this is a fact now. What it is, we don't know. If it were to come out from the government and proven, fine, you guys got us. We've been being visited for God knows how long. And when our government came to be and more intense looking into these types of things, we started collecting these craft. We found craft. There's crash craft. We've shot some down. We've even retrieved some alien bodies. If that were to come out to be true and the government proved it, I've said this to you before on the show, that takes stories like Bob Lazar's story and every other goddamn story you've ever heard about UFOs, flying saucers, alien abductions, lights in the sky, any of this shit. Any of those stories that have not been 100% debunked and actually sound feasible, they're now innocent until proven guilty. It's looking more and more each time this stuff happens. It's looking more and more as if that's the case. And the idea behind David Grush and what he's saying, I think, is that some of the stuff, or maybe all of this stuff, probably a good chunk, isn't necessarily alien, but it's our tech, which was made from reverse engineered alien tech. We've been able to do what we're doing now because we reverse engineered shit that came from some other world and incorporate that into what we can make. That sounds like that's what's going on, a good chunk of what people are seeing, because people are seeing shit and it's weird,
Yeah.
It's the truth now. This is no longer a bedtime story. This is true. That much can't be denied. So I don't know. I think the hearing, I was very happy that they're getting these guys on record in public to do it, because I think that adds a ton of legitimacy to this, especially for all those people that look at this and just laugh it off, whether it's because of the stigma or just because they don't believe it. I think it definitely adds a lot to the credibility of this entire issue,
Did you hear anything about any future hearings or anything? I could have sworn I heard them say they were. Yeah. Okay. I thought I heard them say they were going to be round 2 or something, but
it's a thing. It's going to be constantly happening from here on out. It has been ever since the first one. Like, Congress isn't backing down right now. They're saying we need to get to the bottom of this. It was mentioned, I think, in there, one of the Congress people, maybe you heard it, I think it was towards the end, but he was talking about how there's about someone out there, correct me if I'm wrong. I know I might be wrong on the amount, but he said annually, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, this guy's been looking into it. He said the government has been coming up short. It was either about 5 billion or $5 trillion that's just missing. And it stood out to me because he also made a comment. He said, but if you go with our new laws and you sell something on eBay for $600, IRS is going to be on your ass wanting you to fucking report it. But it's okay for them to lose 5 billion, 5 trillion every fucking year. And this congressperson said how frustrating that was to him because there's clearly something going on. Those funds are going somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And basically what they said, what it came down to was it's basically, oh, we're going to send $100 million to this one project that anyone can find out about. However, that project doesn't actually need 100 million, and they take 25 million of that 100, and that goes to this black program or somewhere else, and then gets trickled off. It's just funneling money. It's just laundering is all the fuck it is. You can't launder money, but sure as shit they can. They're doing it for their own programs, just so you don't know about it. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. But yes, to answer your question, these hearings are an ongoing thing. They will be continuously happening, which is why the government had to create this new program, Arrow or whatever it is, that's studying this phenomena as if the government doesn't already have a clue, which they do. This group that's studying it now, this is just basically a front. It's just to put a public group out there, put a group out there in the public that is studying this on behalf of the government. However, from comments these two head guys running the show have said in past hearings when they've been questioned on this, a lot of their answers point to, they've said things like, they've been asked about things like the Phoenix Lights, right? And their retort to has always been, I don't know about that. We are looking into everything that comes across our desk. In other words, they're being hand-fed particular cases, and they're told these are the only ones you're going to be you're going to be looking at. So you may hear about something, 20 different alleged stories that happened. You're not looking into those. You're only looking at what we hand feed you. So it sounds like that's what's going on, which I wouldn't be surprised. It's just a front so we can see that, it's just to spoof the mass that doesn't know about this stuff. That's all it is. Right. It's what it looks like, feels like. Here's, all this stuff. It's just, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, looks like a duck. Guess what? It's a fucking duck. So, yeah, the hearings are ongoing. That's a thing Congress is keeping up because they really want to get to the bottom of this. And they're trying, like George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, all those people, they're doing everything they can to drum up more public attention, public awareness to this, to push Congress even more, because Congress needs that behind them to get to the government to show the public wants fucking answers too. Mm-hmm. That's how we're going to get there eventually,
Yep.
So, I mean, those are my thoughts. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on it, but I thought it was pretty interesting to hear it.
No, I did.
When this guy said biologics, dude, my mouth was open. I was like, fucking A. Not that was a shock, but that he said it on the record in public. Yes, non-human.
Yeah, no, if you would have told me 5 years ago that we'd be having this discussion, I would have said no way.
You're right.
Not that I believe, I'm not like any expert on it, but I've always believed that probably something's been going on, but I just didn't think they would be discussed in such a setting.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have thought so either.
Yeah.
Nope. I think the setting is set up on behalf of the government. They're setting this up with this Arrow group or whatever it is now, but Congress is pushing. They want to get to the bottom of this. And, I'm waiting to see if they ever ask him about Papoose Lake by Area 51, S4, and see what they have to say. I mean, we know what they're going to say, but put it out there, put it all out there.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
it's
I think a
happening.
lot of this is going to be like a slow desensitizing process where, once they feel that everybody can handle the truth, it's like everything
Right.
from the movies that we've seen to these, things that have been slowly being released. I think that, well, now more than ever, I think the public is ready to hear it. But,
Yeah. Is it really
slowly,
about the public being ready to hear it, or is it about the government thinking that they have to slowly desensitize and dub it and name it as the public being ready or not being ready to hear it? Or is it them doing this slowly to get the public okay with it in the format that the public's not going to revolt when they hear the most important thing we've ever heard in the history of humanity? Because
yeah.
that's going to happen.
Well, and I think they
It's
would keep it a
possible.
secret. They'd keep it a secret forever if they could. But the
Oh,
way technology is, the way
yep.
information is being shared at, light speed, the way everybody has, a camera in their pocket on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's just, eventually, I think it's just the secret is just harder and harder to be
Yes.
kept right
And,
now.
you know, that brings up a question. What do you think about the timing of all this AI stuff right now with what's going on with this whole UFO thing? Now, I know AI's been around for a while, but now it's being put out as they're way farther ahead than we thought, or they've just made a big jump. What do you think about the timing of this with this whole AI issue coming out in the last year and how important it is? And everyone's worried. Elon Musk and Bezos, they're all worried about the future of AI, it becoming too powerful and overpowering humans and taking over the world and all this
Mm,
bullshit. And there needs to be more behind it. Do you think there could be anything to the timing of this?
my gut feeling is no. I think they're unrelated, but
Yeah.
I mean, I see where you're going with it. I think, I could see that there's probably an argument to be made for it, but
Right. I'm
my
not
gut
really
feeling is
going
unrelated.
Yeah, I'm not really going anywhere. I'm not saying I think something, but it just putting two to two together, not even thinking about it, it popped into my head recently. Like, I really wonder if this might have something to do with all this stuff starting to be leaked. Gimbal, Go Fast, Fleur, and all this other stuff happening, because maybe they've made a big jump with AI, and maybe that jump has to do with reverse engineered stuff. So now maybe there's a possibility things are going to start being found out by the public. So let's start our little program to desensitize and bring everyone on board. You know, not saying that's the thing. It just crossed my mind just putting things together. I'm like, I wonder what the possibility is.
Right.
Who knows? Who knows? Could be anything, but I don't know. I don't know. Any final words on this? It was interesting.
No. Yeah. Very interesting. I can't wait to see what, happens in the next, few months or years. I just can't wait to hear more.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Hopefully sooner than later because I don't want to be dead when this happens. you know, but
Yeah.
like, share, subscribe, comment. If you have personal story, like we said, abductions, previous episode on Star Children, you've had those experiences, deja vu, whatever, obscure things, shoot those over to our email, obscuredr1@gmail.com. Type story in the subject line so we know what it is. We'll tell your stories for you, because you probably don't want to publicly. If you do want to be on the show, we might have you on. Wouldn't be hard, very easy. You can be on without video, completely anonymous, and tell your own story. That would be great because then we could actually talk about it, which would be good. With that, I think we're out of here. What do you think,
That's
Mike?
it. We're
Cool.
out.
Peace out.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check back with us often for new episodes. Feel free to drop a comment and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Obscured Reality.